One of the best things to see when in Cape Town is the penguins of Boulders Beach. They've even had their own reality show on Netflix. This protected colony is a breeding ground for the African penguins, and they're carefully looked after. But an outbreak of avian flu has led to the death of about 30 penguins in the colony in less than 6 weeks. Let's find out how dangerous this flu could be, and I'm joined now by Dr. David Roberts of SANCCOB, the Southern African Foundation for the Conservation of Coastal Birds. Dr. Roberts, thank you so much for your time, much appreciated. So 30 birds dead in this colony, that sounds like a lot of birds in just a 6-week period, but how serious is this outbreak?
It certainly is a lot of birds, looking at what normal deaths are, but it is worth thinking there are about 3,000 penguins in the colony, and so it isn't a catastrophe as yet, but we are monitoring the situation closely in case it escalates.
How severe is this avian flu? Is it different every year like our flus? Is it a more vicious strain that's happening this year?
Yes, so what we've been seeing is more often we are seeing more virulent strains, and these high pathogenicity strains are causing greater symptoms, more deaths in wild birds than the one that they naturally carry. And we saw an outbreak in 2018, and then what we're seeing now at Boulders Beach is a continuation of the outbreak that happened in 2021. It's killed large numbers of birds last year, up to 20,000 endangered birds. And so the numbers that we're seeing now are just the tip of that iceberg, continuation of the disease, and we're hoping it's not going to get worse.
Can you inoculate penguins against avian flu?
Although it's theoretically possible, we don't have a vaccine that we can use in the country, and it wouldn't be possible to inoculate large numbers of the wild birds, certainly not with what we have available at the moment.
So how do you protect them against this flu, which is, as you say, quite dangerous?
Yes, so it is deadly to any of the birds that start getting symptoms. They die within the first 24 hours. And so all we can do to protect the wild birds is reduce the numbers of sick individuals in the colony by removing those from the environment, removing the dead bodies, and patrolling to see where we can reduce that virus load in the wild, and then to prevent people from being part of that transmission process, reducing interaction between people and the birds.
How is it spread? Can human beings give it to penguins?
It's spread through the virus being spread on contacts of excretions from the eyes or the nose or the guano of the birds, rather than being carried by mammals or people. So some birds that are symptomatic can pass it on to other birds that are healthy, and then you can have some carriers that don't show symptoms either, and that's how we think it spreads from one area to the other in mildly affected individuals, and birds of lots of different species can carry it.
Is there no treatment? Do all birds who get this die?
In the African penguins, almost all the ones we've seen that have the disease die. There's been a few cases with individuals that don't show any symptoms that have survived and overcome it. But as soon as they show symptoms, we haven't been able to treat it, and therefore it's better to prevent it than so the curing it isn't a possibility once they're symptomatic.
So what are your interventions to try and make sure more birds don't die? Because as you say, 30 dead in 6 weeks, that's a lot, and every bird that shows symptoms does die from it, every penguin. So what are the plans to really crack down on this avian flu?
Well, you've mentioned a very good point there, because there isn't much we can do in wild situations, because some of the animals carrying the disease don't show symptoms. We can't protect the penguins from all the other wild birds. We can't keep them in a safe environment. In many other animals, you could build fences, and but the birds don't respect that. They move wherever they want to. So we're very limited. So we removing the dead and dying animals, reducing the viral load in the colonies, and preventing XX interaction with the people. And then anyone who does interact with these birds has to have very good biosecurity. So protective clothing, disinfection of everything that they use while they're handling the birds, and not using that same equipment in other places. So really keeping a really good biosecurity with whenever you're handling these birds or potential carriers. But otherwise, we just have to monitor the situation. We unfortunately don't have really any other solutions at the moment, and that's similar all over the world.
And I suppose it's, it's worrying because the African penguin is endangered anyway. How much progress is being made to try and improve the numbers of African penguins? How much is this avian flu impacting on that?
So unfortunately, it is a big problem because the African penguin is endangered. So their population is declining for all sorts of other reasons. Their ecosystem in which they live isn't able to support large numbers, and that's multifactorial. So it's due to a lack of food, which is affected by overfishing, as well as the collapse of the ecosystem. So they don't have a robust population. And naturally, if you've got a robust population of wild animals, they can withstand a disaster such as a big event like changes in the weather or a disease like this. But when they're suffering already, then we have other problems. So what we're doing at SANCCOB is supporting many conservation measures to try to protect the penguins, improve the food they've got, reduce the chance of disasters and the impacts of disasters like global warming, strange weather events, and catastrophic events like oil spills. And really working with people to improve the ecosystem they're living in, because they won't survive without a healthy ecosystem.
And very quickly, do you know if tourists will still be able to visit the penguins at Boulders Beach? We know that they're very carefully controlled paths, so will tourists still be able to come and see them this season, or might it be closed because of the worry of infections?
At the moment, there are no plans to close the beaches. We're just encouraging people to give the birds their space, to stick to the boardwalks, and not just with the disease around. In any case, people should be giving these wild animals their space.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening, Dr. David Roberts of the Southern African Foundation for the Conservation of Coastal Birds.